to another exciting episode of Acceptable Accuracy. Last week we discussed, or several weeks ago, we talked about our top 5 guns. Well, this week we're going to talk about our top 5 industry breakthroughs in the last 30-ish years. So I'm Kyle, the guest host. Tyler is still on his vacation in Timbuktu, clandestine fish-free operations.
Spam retrieval operations.
Spam retrieval operations, yes. So we have Phil, as always, covering down with our dependable host.
Yeah, I honestly think I've been on every episode but one that Tyler recorded on his own. So,
but he's nothing if not reliable, our Phil.
That's fair. Yeah, like I was saying, we're gonna talk about the past 30 years of, like, again, what did you call it? Like
industry breakthroughs.
Industry breakthroughs. Yeah.
We considered on this topic. We considered doing firearms, and then I really got to thinking that there hasn't really been a lot of firearms innovation in the last 30 years. It's mostly been the accessories and components field that's really moved a lot. Because when you think about it, and I don't know if I like to think about it, but Glocks came out 40-something years ago.
Yeah. And
they kind of set the stage for the polymer pistol market. And AR-15's been out since the 70s. And, man, there's just not a whole lot out there that's game-changing in the firearms world. So we settled on components.
Yeah, and obviously some of these will play into how firearms function, how you use, firearms, and whatnot, just because that has changed. The technologies have changed from electronics and whatnot that they didn't have in the past, that, or at least as readily available.
Yeah, or inexpensive.
Right, exactly.
It may just be cost prohibitive.
And changes in trends as well, too, within the firearms community. We'll hit on some of that, too. So, again, I think the challenge with this was the past 30 years is, like Kyle was saying, there's just not a lot of firearms advancement, right? I mean, everything has been pretty much done. We don't have lasers yet that we're shooting,
Yeah.
And honestly, like, if you look again, the Glock and the AR-15 are kind of peak. You're only making modifications and variations on those platforms.
Yeah.
Minor improvements.
Yeah, you look at SHOT Show this past year, and how much real innovation did you see when it comes to just a firearm? Everything is all the new stuff coming out is some kind of Striker Fire clone, some kind of AR-15 derivative, some kind of 2011 derivative. You have some very few onesies, twosies, the Largo Alien, the new Largo Alien. I didn't research much into it because it's, $3,000 for a pistol.
Yeah.
That's probably the only thing that I could even start to think about that's maybe unique, but I wouldn't even classify that as game changing. It's just a unique gun. It's not going to change the fact that 90% of gun stores sales are going to be a Striker Fire 9mm.
Right. If you think of firearms too, from like a semi-automatic firearm, the functionality, the feel of shooting a semi-auto may vary from firearm to firearm, and talk about Alien, that definitely changes the feel, but in the end it still does the same thing. Whereas if you look like 100, 200 years ago, going from like a bolt action, being your standard military firearm to I guess semi and full auto nowadays being the standard, right? Yeah. I mean, that was a big change.
Yeah, or black powder to smokeless powder. Yeah. What a leap forward that was.
Right.
Or, the metallic. We get real crazy metallic cartridges. Yeah. Things like that. Or those are real easy. We could what's the biggest firearms improvement ever? We went from hand cannons to muzzle loading muskets, things like that. That's
rifle barrels.
Rifling.
Yeah.
There's some obvious things that pop out, but
those are all 100, 200 years.
Yeah, everything. All those things were before any of our alive generation. Those were developed. Basically anything John Moses Browning designed.
Yeah, which makes this thought experiment more challenging.
Yeah, but a lot more challenging.
Yeah. But as we started digging into it, a lot of stuff came up, and I'm sure we're going to forget things, and people are, post, comment, please do, about what we forgot, or email us, podcast@acceptableaccuracy.com. if we forgot something. But these are things that kind of came to mind for us. And we each have 5. We did share in advance with each other just because, we don't overlap and because there were so many options and just kind of help spur the conversation. So Kyle, I'll have you kick off with, since you're the guest host,
Yeah.
the ghost, and I'll have you kick off with the first one on your list. And again, these are in no particular order.
Yeah, no particular order. I don't think anything is really one thing above another, but just kind of the first thing that came to mind when I thought about major innovations in the last 30ish years was the ACOG. The implementation of that with the U.S. military. I mean, to the point where the Marine Corps had to investigate the Marine infantrymen line units because they were getting so many headshots that they thought they were executing prisoners overseas in Iraq, because that changed the game. And you could get really into the weeds on the development of the ACOG, but basically how the ACOG came about was the United States, weapon development decided that instead of trying to make multi-shot rifles and space age looking fish guns and things like that, they just said, well, what if we just took an M16 and put a scope on it?
Yeah.
And then they just made probably one of the most proven battle tested optics ever.
And I think that point is the most important one and why the ACOG is on this list.
Yeah.
Because, the scopes have existed for,
200 years.
Yeah.
I mean, people were putting scopes on, black powder action, lever guns and, scopes, primitive scopes have been around basically as long as, if not longer than the metallic cartridge has.
Yeah.
And
you would see, and you would see scopes in war would be usually, like reserve. I think like World War II, they were usually reserved for more like sniper rifles.
Sniper, designated marksman kind of roles.
Exactly.
They were more used for like an observation kind of things. They were delicate. They were fragile.
Yes, that's the key right there.
Versus, when you've seen ACOGs get dropped on weapons out of a helicopter and still hold zero.
Yeah.
That's when it really kind of changed, I think, what the public perception of a magnified optic in a combat environment, what that was capable of. And then you started to see advancements to more acceptable fact that you have a piece of glass on your rifle rather than just sticking with the tried and true, dependable iron sight, and really increasing capability in the firearm.
And then the other thing, kind of like you were talking about earlier too, is that you had like snipers or designated marksmen that had a scope.
Yeah.
But now you're giving magnification and more capabilities to your average infantryman.
Yeah.
You're not just limiting it to like certain select individuals.
Yeah.
Right. So everybody gets one, and then it's like super durable, and then like synonymous. And there are plenty of people that still use. You don't see ACOGs as much in the competitive, like for landscape much anymore. More LPVOs. And
it's definitely antiquated now a bit.
Yeah.
I'd still say it's a very dependable, robust optic, and it's a good choice for somebody that has the one rifle to do everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't really do the competition realm well because of its fixed magnification and short eye relief, but the reason why I made this list is because I think it really started to show the consumer market and the military market how valuable magnification on a standard rifle is. That it's not just something for the sniper designated marksman role. It really can be used for a general purpose rifle. And that led the way for, your later optics.
Yeah, and the exception level or the acceptance level of those, which we kind of hit on as well. And now you've got like, what is the VCOG?
Yeah. It's graduated. Like I said, we have the Marine Corps now. Everyone has a VCOG of 1 to 6, I believe, or 1 to 8. I'm not 100%. Never used it. Option for all your standard infantry rifles are having that increased magnification, which, magnification doesn't make you shoot better, but it makes you see better, which can help you shoot better.
Yeah.
So that's why I have it on this list to really, I think it really opened up that floodgates of what's possible and what can be done.
No, I completely agree. And that was one I didn't even have on my list. When I was even starting to look at this. And then as soon as you put it on there, I was like, yep, that makes a ton of sense, because it was paved the way for a lot of other optics options down the road. So the first one I have on my list, I actually put on there initially as the PMAG from Magpul. But then I kind of morphed that into more of a larger take on advanced polymers.
Mm-hmm.
The PMAG obviously being a pretty good invention.
So I was following you on the PMAG.
Yeah.
But expand a little bit on like other plastic applications.
Yep. So if you look at like the OG like M16, right? They were using more. Should make the term wrong. The polymers they were using were not overly advanced. They were using some other material. I forget what it was. It slips my mind. But as Magpul and other polymer manufacturers started producing, we think of a lot of furniture as the first thing that comes to mind, right? And magazines come to mind. And now it's like back when you would like buy an M16 and stuff, they would use more of like vinyls. But now when you buy an AR-15, it's almost always comes with some sort of polymer set of furniture.
Yeah.
Right. And even polymer handguards, not so much anymore, more aluminum just for the rigidity, but still an option there too. But then I like to think even beyond that, where you have firearms that actually have components that are like the lower receiver or even potentially upper receivers that are made out of polymers. So I think of like the Scorpion, for example, has a lot of polymer in it, right? It's a lot of metal in it, but a lot of polymers.
Yeah.
Which is wild to me that you can do that. And I think of even in the Glock, we talked about, it's, older than 30 years, but you look at like polymer-framed pistols, and their wide adoption and acceptance over the last 30 years over metal pistols or revolvers that may have existed in police departments.
Yeah.
Now you'd be weird if you were buying, unless you're buying a Staccato, I suppose, a full metal firearm.
Yeah, I mean that's where I was gonna make a point. Is it's rare to see a kind of flagship pistol come out that's fully metal.
Yeah.
I mean even Staccato is a polymer frame.
Oh, I didn't know that.
With metal inserts and a metal slide. It's predominantly plastic.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's very widely accepted now to have a plastic components on a firearm whereas 30, 40 years ago that would have been a metal part. I mean, think about Smith & Wesson. I mean, Smith & Wesson semi-automatic pistols were all metal until the MP9.
Yeah.
And the MP9 was what, 12, 15 years ago?
Yeah, that's a good point. But it's interesting now. I think there's a trend too for people going back to metal, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Like people want metal frame firearms, which is great, but then the affordability of polymer is hard to beat as well too.
Yeah,
and
high cost to set up, but
Yep.
a really good return on investment.
Right. And I think too, like if you're buying a budget AR, I think one of the reasons it can be budget is because the furniture is polymer or the handguard is polymer. Like Palmetto State still sells a lot of firearms that have like, all of those items is cheaper than putting aluminum as for a rail.
Yeah, your cheapest handguard is still going to be a Magpul clamshell style with a heat shield. Yep. And then you think about, going back to, past 30 years, but, the first Car 15 collapsible stocks were milled out of aluminum. I mean, they were an aluminum stock that was collapsible. I mean, think about how expensive that would be now to machine versus just injected molding one, and you pay $35 instead of $150 for a stock. So I mean that's a big game changer, and especially with like the PMAG, with the durability, flexibility of it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that the magazine is usually the weakest link on a semi-automatic firearm. So Magpul being able to come in and basically make it one of the most reliable parts on an AR-15 is, I mean, I've seen them run over by Humvees and still work fine.
That's actually a really good call out about the reliability of the magazines, because it's interesting that a polymer is more reliable than like using aluminum mag.
Yeah,
right?
or steel. Yeah,
it's just crazy to me because of the thinness of like the walls on a steel or aluminum magazine, and their ability if they get dent or crimped, like it's done.
it's over.
You
Yeah,
can't fix it. Whereas like polymers tend to retain their shape. They're not as high heat, obviously, but you don't need it in a magazine necessarily.
yeah,
And they tend to retain their shape, or they crack fully, and then it's done.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you could tell when it's wrong. Whereas like from what I've heard is that the metal magazines would be out of spec, and you wouldn't even know it
Yeah, until you have a problem. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean the age old argument of, you know, how many rounds do you load in your 30 round magazine? Do you load it to 30? Do you load it to 29? Do you download it to 28? You know, that Magpul Gen 2 and Gen 3 PMags kind of destroyed that argument because, you know, they accounted for that. They need a little bit extra space to insert a fully loaded magazine on a closed chamber. So if you load it to 30, you've got room to insert it. So 30 rounds is the way, guys.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember the name of the plastics they were using. It was Bakelite.
Bakelite. Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Plastic plywood.
Yes, which was, and it was a plastic. It was just an early plastic, and obviously we've made, you know, major leaps and bounds since then with the polymers. And I'm curious to see where it's going to go to. And now, if you think about anything that's 3D printed, right? Like you can 3D print ABS, like pistol or even AR-15 lower, which has changed the game from like, if you think about control over firearms, right? Like it's the whole adage of like, you can't control the signal, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Can't stop the signal, man.
yeah. So anyway, that's why I picked it. Now, again, we're not ranking everything, but that was the first one I kind of wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
because of its massive impact.
Yeah, I mean, every single person listening to this probably has PMags.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, you talk about a game changing thing. It's going from aluminum. Everybody has aluminum or steel AR-15 mags to now every AR-15 ships with a polymer magazine.
Yeah, 100%. And then they're cheap. Again, we talked earlier, and you can buy a bajillion of them. And that's another positive on the gun rights. This is not a gun rights episode, but the more synonymous and the more these things get out there, the harder it is that they are to take away. Exactly. So if you can buy, you know, like 10 for 30 rounds for $100
on Black Friday sale,
you can't,
and get 100 rounds of ammo.
Yeah, you're not taking that back. No. So, yeah. All right, what do you got for number 2?
So number 2 is not necessarily a firearm component, but I think a big industry change was the silencer shop kiosks in gun shops. Really streamlining the way for people to get not only silencers but also other Form 4 NFA items, but predominantly silencers, where back before then, Form 4 transfers were a little bit more of a kind of a dark art. You know, not all shops did it, and the shops that did do it all had different ways of doing it. Silencer shop putting out literally a DMV style kiosk in gun shops and really making it like, hey, where do I get my fingerprints done? Right there.
Yeah.
Right. See that corner, that TV screen over there? Yeah. You go on your, here's a computer, make an account. They'll send you an email with a code. Go type your code into that kiosk and you do your fingerprints right now. Yeah. You don't have to go to a store, and you don't have to go to the sheriff's office or a private investigator and get a fingerprint card and get that and make sure it's done right. And nope, here's the way you do it. Here's how it's done. Easy peasy. And it really helps streamline that process to smooth out Form 4 transfers. And I think without that, silencer ownership probably wouldn't be where it is today.
No, I completely agree. And I think about the ability to like avoid having mistakes. Because now, granted, we're in like the $0 tax stamp time period. But like before, when you would do a paper, form, like for your suppressor, which I did for my first one.
Yeah, me
Like,
too.
dude, it took forever.
Forever.
And if you screw something up,
You
like,
didn't know about it for
yeah,
6 months.
and then you would, maybe you could fix it, but then you're, not necessarily put it back in the back of the line, but maybe, and you're gonna wait another 6 months potentially or longer.
Yeah, I waited 367 days for my first two cans.
Yeah, I was 270 something, I think, for my can.
So maybe we amend this slightly too and do the E as
Yeah,
well
but
as add the E forms as
a
well.
lot of that though, I think, was because of like Silencer Co. Shop working with the ATF to
Yeah.
improve a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
the industry as a whole, I
Yeah.
think, worked with them on
Yeah,
improving that.
really, and the kiosks making it so many more people buying cans that it
Yeah.
forced the ATF to
Yes.
figure out how to make the process easier on their end.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know an individual that used to work at that office, that ATF office in West Virginia, and he said it was literally buried in paperwork.
Yeah.
It was death by paper cuts at that job.
Yeah,
So,
and if anything could be accelerated, would be that process, because your basic cookie cuttering everybody's submission is pretty much going to be roughly the same. Different products, but like your fingerprints, there's photos, and you have to fill out a certain form, right? Like that's just right for automation, or at least like electronic version of it. I also think of the kiosks too, and that whole thing of making it easier for people to get cans and actually bringing that conversation into the forefront. I don't think without having kiosks, not having the amount of suppressors that those kiosks have sold,
yeah.
I don't think you have the $0 tax stamp.
No, I don't think you have the e-forms. I don't think you have the $0 tax stamps. I don't think you have the actual serious conversations about deregulating several NFA items. I don't think it exists without more people coming into a gun shop, seeing a silencer shop kiosk, and going, "Hey, you can buy a silencer? Oh, absolutely. Here's the process. Here's how much they cost. Oh, I'd like to get one."
Yes.
And now you have somebody else trying to, get into the NFA world. So I personally think that's one of the biggest leaps forward in the industry. So Silence Shop, doubt you're listening to it, but if you are, sponsor us because I love you.
I'm actually going to use that to kind of pivot into. I'm going to skip one of these and I'll come back to it later. But to go into my next, change in the industry and actually in the community with this one to be a little bit more, is the acceptance of suppressors, body armor, and nods. Like the normalization of that within the community. And there's a lot you can attribute to that, and there's individuals you can attribute to a lot of that as well too. I think of Isaac from TRX Arms, now no longer from TRX Arms. Like he did a lot of Lucas. Sorry, Isaac is also there, but he's one. Yeah,
he's one of the older brothers.
Yep. Unfortunately, a really good podcast, but I can't listen to him anymore. Yeah. Anyway, but TRX Arms again with Lucas making releasing videos of him as a beanpole civilian running around in body armor and nods with suppressors. Made it more it took it kind of from the military
niche, very niche, subset.
Video games type thing, and said, hey, you can own these legally as a civilian, and it's part of yes, it's not a firearm itself, but it's part of that additional community in there. And then I think as a result of that, you saw the adoption of those things, and then you saw competition starting to pick that up and have divisions for body armor divisions to add weight, to make things more challenging, to make more type 2 type fun. Many of us have run competitions that have required those things, which gives you an excuse to have them, which then just continues to normalize things. And you even see CrossFit trainers running, or CrossFitters running in plates. Yeah, right? They're not bulletproof, but they're running plate carriers.
Yeah, you see a company like 511 who traditionally only sold stuff to military contractors and security contractors, police departments, plain clothes, low visibility military type stuff. Now they have a plate carrier specifically designed for working out in.
Yeah.
Like,
Which is crazy.
yeah,
Like,
like that's a
yeah.
normal thing. Like you
Yeah.
cannot have any interest in firearms, but you own a plate carrier to work out in,
Yeah.
and it's a quick change to make that from a workout implement to a self defense tool.
Yeah, I when I would walk around my neighborhood and get ready for the Wolverine 5K, which we did the hardcore division requiring you to wear a plate carrier. Like I would carry mags on me or anything, but like, and I didn't really care too much. It was gray, so it kind of blended in with the sweatshirt. And a lot of that training was during the winter anyway, so nobody really noticed. But like, you could just slap like CrossFit Velcro over there, and nobody would care or notice, and
Yeah,
you're gonna get the cops called on you.
yeah.
So
Or I mean, I've seen people in my neighborhood wearing, obviously it's a plate carrier, but it's got some kind of lime green or
yeah,
orange or
yeah,
something on it that
yeah,
looks that oh that's a CrossFit vest, but it
yeah.
looks like body armor. So
So
that's been a huge change, and a lot of other YouTubers and stuff have normalized that. I mean, Grand Thumb, take what you want about his personal life, but I mean, huge influence on
yeah,
putting more military style equipment in the hands of people that are just normal folks and don't really have a you know career need for that kind of a working need for that
right.
equipment, just want it to either enjoy having it or because just in case or whatever. There's a ton of people that,
Because we can.
yeah,
Yeah,
because we can. This is
yeah.
the United States, we can do that kind of stuff because we want to. But it's, yeah, I mean that's a huge change because now we have a whole different subsection of the industry that won't settle for you know Chinese made, poorly stitched tactical gear from the 80s that is a nylon bucket holster strapped to the chest with shotgun sling, saddles, all, shell
Yeah.
carriers all over it, and you look like Dog the Bounty Hunter. It's just you look at tactical gear from the 80s and it's just ridiculous, and you look at
Oh
tactical
yeah.
gear now because the civilian market has exploded in it.
Right.
It's better for the military, it's better for civilians that are interested in that kind of stuff for whatever rainy day or just like for CrossFit.
That is actually a great call out. And if we forget to mention it later, and I'll try to bring it up when there's another thing I'll touch on. But whenever you normalize something for civilians, obviously there's a ton of money and a ton of contracts behind government, like DoD military usage, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
always gonna be a lot of, and there's gonna be innovation in that space. But when you throw in the civilian side of things, there's going to be additional innovation because they're going to find something that's more comfortable because they're going to demand it to be more comfortable because
Yeah,
they're buying it with their own dollars versus the government buying it.
yeah. Versus
Then
this is what you
yeah,
get. Don't cry about it. At
exactly.
least you get body
Yeah. Yeah,
armor.
more usable or more like sized correctly for different body style types,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think of like people that are, smaller to taller people, even women, I guess, that have it. Like, you're gonna get that.
Just think about, I mean, plates specially designed
Yeah,
for a woman's body.
yeah,
I mean, that kind of stuff didn't exist 30 years ago.
right,
If you had body armor, if you were a military female, you wore the same plates as the men, and your chest is most likely not the same
yeah,
as a man's.
yeah.
I mean, there's some big boys out there that probably could
Then
use those women's
maybe they can
plates.
use women's plates.
They probably could take advantage of a woman's plate.
Yeah.
But it's that stuff wouldn't exist without a civilian market paving the way for that development.
Yeah. Even with nylon, I think that about that too. There's a lot of like, because I think you get a lot of these companies too that want to get military contracts and they'll get like their cage codes or whatever for items that they'll.
Yeah.
But in there, that's not necessarily enough for them to be able to stay afloat, right? Whereas like if they can sell to the civilian market, then they have the ability to kind of help themselves stay afloat. But the costs as well too in like take it or leave it on Chinese body armor, if you just need a pair of plates just to wear for a competition or whatever, then it's cheap, right?
Yeah.
Or even if you're CrossFit and you can buy the inserts that are going to be just metal plates or whatever. But if you want to buy ceramics or something like that, you can get cheap Chinese ones. But even American-made stuff has come down significantly, and there's been some improvements in that because there's a demand for those things. And whenever there's a demand, there's more money research, and there's more quantity of selling those. Plate carriers being the same way, the prices have come down. As you can buy fairly inexpensive plate carriers that for your average person are going to last them their entire life.
Yeah.
So,
So my third thing on the list, again, no particular order to this list, is FRTs, super safeties, rare breed, Delta Team, Partisan. Now, I mean, there's so many options now on the market.
yeah.
It
What is an FRT real quick? I think most people know.
Yeah, forced reset
Yeah.
triggers.
Yeah. Like
So-
we one of the feedback I've gotten from people that like listen to the podcast are like, make sure you explain your.
Yeah, no more. Yeah, speaking in acronyms
acronyms,
can get a little
Anyway,
difficult sometimes.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, so forced reset triggers, I think, and super safeties have really opened up the market recently. It was a pretty recent development. With, I mean, having near full auto. It's not full auto legally.
Full semi.
Full semi-automatic. Having that be available at a pretty low cost of entry versus if you wanted anything remarkably close to full auto, you would have to buy a transferable machine gun, and those are way outside of even the above average budget. I mean, it's you got to have a pretty significant disposable income to get into a transferable machine gun when you can get into an FRT for less than $500 and be pretty close. Now, time will tell on the durability, longevity of them, their effectiveness, things like that. And any sort of real competition shooter or tactical person will tell you that full auto is not super valuable in a situation like that. But I think it really just changes the expectation of what people have when you have a legal option for something that is about as close as you can get.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes back to, and again, this is not an episode about gun politics, though it seems it's a lot tied into this.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's okay. I'm not mad about that. I think of, you've got people in the U.S. because, we're Americans that are finding ways to, within the like letter of the law,
Yep.
to like create solutions, we'll say,
Yep.
that are legal, that the government tries to like, they came after, FRT manufacturers, but in the end, it's like the law is written this way, we're meeting the requirement of the law. And I love that stuff, and I love that. It's like the American spirit. And I know some people will be upset about these, and I think if there's ever a crime committed with an FRT, there's going to be blowback on. Sorry, that's a pun.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's going to be some blowback on that, and some potential trying to make some legal changes. So even Trump came after bump stocks.
Yeah,
And
I mean, FRTs are definitely a razor's edge of the gun control argument, and like I said, time will tell a little bit on whether they hurt or help the gun freedom laws in this country. But for now, I think it's a huge leap forward in the advancement. Can't control everybody's actions with them, unfortunately, but I think they do still have a little bit of enough of a barrier of entry that you're not going to see them used irresponsibly very regularly.
Yeah, when you're setting up an FRT, there's like some of the things you put in is just going to work, but like there's a lot of intent behind it, and you have to do tuning to make it work. Yeah. So if you're somebody who's going to try to do something heinous, like you're not, I mean, maybe you would, but you're not going to like tinker with trying to make it run.
Yeah,
it's like you're gonna buy.
History shows these people that carry out heinous acts with firearms don't typically put a lot of effort into the gear that they've chosen, and even if somebody that were to want to use one of these for a mass shooting or something like that, they're not going to honestly, most of the time they're not going to be as effective as they would be with
Yeah,
a semi-auto
because they'll run.
because they're gonna run out of
They won't know
ammunition.
how to control it.
They won't be able to
Yeah.
control and honestly, it may not even run.
Yeah.
That's the other. Like
Agreed.
I said, you do have to tinker with it. You do have to, make sure it works. And if you don't know at least the base layer of those things, you it's not really going to be working for you.
No, it's a big deal, and again, I think it just shows that like, the American people aren't just sitting down and taking, these gun law changes. They're actually going after and trying to make improvements within our rights, within the laws that are written, and showing how ridiculous as a result some of these laws are.
Yeah.
My number 3 is slide mounted pistol optics.
Yeah, this is one we both had.
Yeah. So this is because I think we both had it because it first thing that comes to mind because we both shoot with primarily with optics on our pistols.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the concept of and we say slide mounted because I think if you look back past 30 years, the frame mounted pistol dots probably existed. I can't remember when the Seymour.
Oh, I think I've seen footage of like bullseye pistols with a red dot on it, like probably as far back as like the early 80s, late 70s.
Yeah. But again, those were very like niche cases where you weren't necessarily going to holster something like that in a concealed carry format or
very,
very
very fragile, very niche market.
You had to have like a certain pistol.
Yeah, had to do a lot of customization to it to get it on there. Yeah, it wasn't a normal thing to have that on a handgun.
Yeah, and that's another example too of how I love the fact that like the originals were kind of like the RMR, right, which was never designed to be put on a pistol from its original inception.
Yeah, the RMR Type 1 was not designed that way, but it was, again, Trijicon leading the charge of, well, we made a super durable optic, and if done correctly, it will work on a reciprocating slide.
And then it's interesting too because this is one where like a lot of these things, I guess it was after FRTs, which is very new. A lot of these items on the list, have been around for almost those entire 30 years. But this is something that like when I came into competition shooting, the vast majority of individuals were still shooting iron sights.
Oh, same.
Like hands down.
Yeah, same.
And
even, 10 years ago when I started competing, it was,
And now
production was still the highest class.
And now carry optics is on USPSA. It just
not even a competition at that point. It's carry optics is by and large the largest.
And then 2 other points with this too I would make is, as such, the civilian market with people buying pistols, if they're new into it, my guidance has always been for individuals like if you're going to buy a pistol, buy one that is cut for an optic because even if you don't decide you ever want to have an optic on it, you will regret especially if it's the only pistol. Yeah. You'll regret not having the ability to add a red dot.
Yeah, if you ever get the chance to do it, you will want to do it.
And now the amount of manufacturers, I think every major manufacturer offers a pistol of some sort that has a cut. For an optic.
Going back to our previous podcast, talking about firearms, that have come out, or early in this podcast, excuse me, I'm getting a little bit
late.
This off. It's a little late for us. But, try to think about a pistol that has come out in the last 5 years that isn't optics ready. I mean, or like you said, at least has an option for it, block MOS and MMPs. But yeah, just about, even, you're even getting 1911s now that come out with an optic cut from the factory. It's something that didn't typically have the option, just as it's, not exactly the design conducive to it. They've made a way to put it on because it is so popular.
Yeah, and then kind of talking about earlier too is now you're seeing the adoption in military, especially like the U.S. being that we're a little more modern in our funding is a lot higher. I think maybe it's the most important thing.
Yeah, that helps.
But you're seeing the adoption of M17, M18, right? You're seeing the adoption of optics on those. Not all of them do, but there are the option to have it there, and I think did they select the Delta Point, and then some other units have selected other.
Delta Point, I think, was the initial,
Yeah.
and then SIG came out with their
Yeah.
M17 Romeo
Yeah.
enclosed dot that's low profile.
Yeah.
That mates
Replace it,
exactly to it. So, which allegedly is a pretty good optic. I've never had an experience with it, but yeah, I mean, it's good luck going to a gun shop,
Yeah.
looking at concealed carry, duty focused handguns that aren't designed to be range toys, and good luck finding one that isn't optics ready.
And I love the fact too, and you kind of brought this up earlier, that when you can buy one that a pistol that's cut to put an optic on it, but there are a lot of companies, including Glock, that have a pistol that comes with an optic, so that if you are like a police department, for example, for Glock with their aim point, if you want to procure like firearms for your department, you can buy the exact same thing for everyone, and it just comes with the price is great on it from what I've heard.
And it comes from the factory
That's
with a warranty. You don't have to have your department armor go through and put 50 optics on 50 handguns and make sure he does it the right way every single time. It's one and done. And that's common now, extremely common. That any email you get from a retailer is gonna have guns that come with optics.
Especially in the concealed carry market too, because you have people that like don't necessarily know how to mount an optic properly. That know they want one. I'm not sure if they're zeroing them from the factory or not, or if there's just like if the manufacturer and they know, well, this is where we put it on there, this is close enough based on
just mechanical zero.
Most 9mm loads are gonna be close enough. It's interesting that, and that just makes the decision from the consumer a lot easier. Now, there's always going to be people like us that shoot competition that are going to pick a pistol, then pick an optic, and then you swap back and forth for those. And that I don't have a problem with those things, but
or you're more you're more discerning,
right?
I mean,
you want this.
I think of friends I have that they have 5 guns with 5 different optics on them. They haven't settled on one type that they like. They just have bought several because they like it and they want to try different ones.
All right, what do you got for number 4?
So number 4 for me would be kind of a 2-ish part is M-Lock, another Magpul product. Kind of also goes into free floating handguards on ARs. I talked a while ago about, I remember tube forends on ARs. They are having good luck finding an AR that doesn't come with a free float M-Lock handguard now. It's so ubiquitous now that it's almost way more common to find an inexpensive or even a high-end AR that comes with a free floated handguard than it does come with a post front sight with a plastic clamshell style handguard on it. Because before that, you had all different kinds of stuff that was on there, and nobody was really standardized. You had the M-Lock key mod wars, and then you had the, whatever Knights Armament was doing, and Samson was doing, and this company was doing, and Rock River was doing this, and everybody was doing different stuff. And then the military tested it, and they said M-Lock's the best. And
beat up key mod.
And key mod, BCM had to bow out, unfortunately. I love you, BCM.
Yeah.
You're great products, but your industrial pallet shelving rack didn't work.
One of the greatest things that Magpul did when they created M-Lock is that they made it available and they didn't charge people for it.
Yeah.
So it improved the entire industry while also, and if they had said, well, we're going to make it proprietary and you have to pay us to use this on your devices, right?
Yeah.
They could have would have taken off. And they would have sold, but I think they're making way more money off the fact that they released it as a open.
Yeah.
Then they're not charging anybody for it. Because now they can make a ton of accessories that people are going to buy. And Magpul's name is so synonymous with, again, polymers, but then even beyond that. And they're not necessarily making a ton of M-Lock accessories. They make rails and stuff, but there's probably more companies that are making more things
Yeah.
that don't involve Magpul. I think of like, laser mounting options or flashlight mounting options that don't necessarily involve them, that
Yeah.
you
I
can
mean,
plug right in M-Lock.
if you can get a company like Surefire to start to change its mount,
Yeah.
you've made a serious impact on the industry.
Right.
Surefire doesn't like to change. They're kind of like Glock, but they, when you can have such a high influence in the market that companies are changing flagship products to fit your mounting interface, that's a
Yeah.
huge change. And it was a little slow. Like I said, during the key mod and block, you saw like 50/50 in stores and stuff like that. But again, I challenge anybody to go into a store and find a factory brand new gun with key mod on it.
Yeah.
It's probably not there.
Or even finding key mod accessories that you can find in a store.
Yeah.
Like the Hustle Hard. You can order them online still. Because there are people out there that still have key mod.
Yeah,
I do. I have one.
Yeah, I have a couple guns with key mod
Yep.
accessories or key mod rails on them,
Yep.
but it's not common.
No, not anymore. And I got a feeling too that like the stuff that exists today in key mod will probably continue to be made. Like anything with like a Picatinny rail attachment, you'll probably be able to find those for a while. But anything new, I think you're just gonna not like anytime new lasers, lights, or whatever. It's gonna be all M-Lock.
Yeah, and it just changing from the the cheese grater quad rail heavy, going to a same, almost the same rigidity. Now, there is an argument, Picatinny mounting versus M-Lock, what's a little more secure. Picatinny obviously is going to be a bit more secure of an optic.
I would say so. Yeah.
Of a mounting system. That's why you still see rails with at least some Picatinny rail sections on the top, if not a full rail on top. But I mean, having that weight trade off, where do you really need Picatinny rail all the way to the back of the handguard? I mean, what are you mounting there? Maybe a sling mount on one side, where you can now just put a small section of rail piece there, and it's
or an M-Lock slot,
or a direct mount to the M-Lock if you want to keep it streamlined. So that's in my opinion, that's probably one of the bigger changes. I'm starting to realize that my list is almost entirely focused on AR-15s, but
that's okay.
But it's such a integral part of the firearms ownership. Like, I can't really think of a new AR, or even like the SCAR, the Gen 2 SCARs that just came out. They ditched the Picatinny rails for M-Lock sections on those.
I wonder if we'll start seeing M-Lock on other things that are not firearms. Like any kind of locking mechanism that you would need to be low profile.
I believe I've seen it on like overlanding vehicle components before.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can't think of any specific ones, but
I've seen so far. There's a guy that I know. I was asking because he's really into bow hunting. I was like, "Have you seen M-Lock on anything yet?" And I think he said that maybe a few
I have seen it on crossbows.
Yeah, start looking at it, but then I guess he said the bow industry actually has gone into the proprietary more recently, which I thought was interesting. He's like, "Yeah, it's kind of annoying because," but then he was saying that like within the firearms enthusiasts, we like you may like Glocks or you may like Smith & Wesson or SIG or whoever. And you may have those pistols, but then you're gonna own other brands, right? Whereas like he was saying in the bow industry, like people would be very brand loyal.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
And then so then that company will make accessories for it. So, but no, M-Lock is a huge change and huge advantage, and I think it's just another example of how like the Western world has continued to make improvements on their platforms, and like China and Russia just can't keep up.
Yeah, I mean, even when you're starting to see M-Lock handguards for AK pattern guns that are being used overseas. Yeah.
All right, my number 4, and I realize I don't have a number 5, so I had a list from earlier that pulled a 5 from, which I'll get to eventually. But number 4 for me was LPVO, so low power variable optic. Mm-hmm. I was looking this up in advance of this, and LPVO is in concept of like when I say LPVO, it's like for those who don't know, you have like a 1x or as close as you can get to like a true 1x, but then you go out to anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 to 10x on the high end on the variable side of the the optic, and those can vary between first and second focal plane, which we won't get into here, but you can look it up if you want to. LPVOs, the concept again exists since the 1920s. I actually found some information. I think it was Magpul's site I found this information on.
Yeah,
But
I think I've seen a really old loophole that was like 1.5.
yeah, exactly. But the concept of using them in the sheer adoption of LPVOs within the last even 15 years, maybe 20, has been like the de facto go-to for a optic sighting solution for civilian rifles, for sure. Competition, definitely.
Yeah.
And then even with, we talked about the VCOG, the adoption of the VCOG.
Well, now with SIG Tango 6,
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
That's adopted as well.
I forgot about that. That's a good point. So you're starting to see again, this is another example of, I think, where the consumer market has started to spill into the military market, where, again, the need from, I think LPVOs was really popular for 3-gunners. The hunters, I think, used some LPVOs as well, too.
A little bit. I think more East Coast
3 to
stuff,
9s, maybe.
but yeah. I think the medium power is still pretty much the flagship there. But, I mean, I'm sure, like hog hunting.
Yeah.
With it, I'm sure, low power variables are pretty common in that. I mean, I've used my 1 to 10 to hunt deer.
Yeah.
But it's I'm sure east of the Mississippi is more common because you get further out west, you get a lot more range. You need that higher end magnification.
What I find interesting is now you've got military, civilians, and even police departments using it as well.
Oh yeah.
I think the day that it kind of hit like full, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like full saturation was I remember there was the school shooting, and the guy that they're going in, and the guy was like, push the LPVO, push the LPVO.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's an interesting way of referring to the rifle, the guy that had LPVO on his rifle, and they, instead of saying push the rifle,
yeah, they all had rifles, but this one guy had the better sighting system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which I thought was interesting versus, again, like the shotgun or whatever that they may have had, but you're seeing these police departments that have increasing, again, like the ACOG for the military, you're giving your police officers, a sighting system that allows them to be more accurate.
Yeah.
Right.
Gather more information.
And how many police videos have we seen where they've taken average police officers taking a fairly accurate shot offhand with an LPVO to stop a threat?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, LPVOs are definitely I think the ACOG kind of opened that dialogue up that, okay, a magnified optic can be durable enough for duty or combat use. How do we get it to be the best we can? Well, the next step is have a 1X and have some magnification. So you had, your 1 to 4s. And then, okay, technology's improved. Let's go a little bit more, 1 to 6. Okay, technology's improved. Go 1 to 8. Technology's improved. Go to 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And, you get your lemons in there. If you buy a $150 LPVO, it's probably going to suck at 1X and 6X. You spend $1,800, on a Vortex 1 to 10. It's pretty sweet. So you're going to get your, optics are definitely something that you get what you pay for. Most, 90% of the time you are.
Right.
So, but just having that out there as an option and the development, the saturation that's occurred with it, like you said, really leads to development of it. And it's ubiquitous. I mean, if you have an AR, you have a red dot on it, with maybe a magnifier, but you really see more LPVOs than you do red dot magnifiers nowadays.
I would agree with that, even though I personally run magnifier with or that. But I do have an LPVO.
I do both.
I have done both.
Yeah.
And I'll probably in a year or two I'll switch back to an LPVO.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of improvements too with LPVOs tend to be heavy, right? But there's been a lot of improvements lately with reducing weight and length. Primary Arms, of all people, like their PLX series of LPVOs is probably some of the best you can get out there for a fairly reasonable dollar amount.
Yeah.
And they're short. They very usable. And then they're, again, debate on reticle systems, but you can get reticle systems from anywhere that have like hash marks on them to be useful for like certain weight 5.56 bullet, right? So you don't have to do the math and using either MOA or mil reticle, right? It just makes life easier for your average shooter. In those types of like etching on glass is they've done stuff in the past with etching, but now it's just you're really fine because of the modern manufacturing processes.
All right, I'll take us into the fifth series here. So again, an AR part, pistol braces. You know, the Sig brace way back.
I forgot about
What was that?
that Sig
2012
was like the first one to do that.
2012. They came out with that and really had to fight. You know, thankfully it was a large company and they really had to fight for that and got approved. And then I think it really took off with the SB Tactical SBA3 brace.
Yep.
You know, the collapsible integrated sling mount, and that really opened up the AR pistol market. And now it's not uncommon that you've got it's pretty much eliminated the requirement to be fixed at 16 or 14.5 pinned, and then we're able to see things like people having ready access to an 11.5 or a 12.5, and opened up that barrel debate a bunch where we what's is 16 what you need, or can you get away with something more that's just as good and gives you a little bit more advantage in the mobility and weight department. But that I think, again, this isn't a laws podcast, but it seems like we're kind of keep moving in that direction. But it's it really changed how or what our availability for firearms purchases were, and it opened up to more regular use, especially with a company like Palmetto State Armory that's putting out arguable quality of firearms, but I mean just saturating the market with AR pistols that have basically deleted the need for an NFA registry, because if the difference between a short barreled rifle and an AR pistol is literally just the piece of plastic on the back end of it, do we really have an argument about it anymore?
Exactly.
And so as any discerning gunner knows, it doesn't change the effectiveness of the gun, really. It doesn't make it more dangerous, doesn't make it safer.
Right.
Got a longer barrel versus a shorter barrel. It's an arbitrary measurement that was made up based off of fashion in the 20s. it's a ridiculous thing. So having that ability to legally and readily have an option for a shorter barreled AR firearm has really changed what you see in the availability of firearms on the market today.
And it's called out, to your point, the ridiculousness of SBR laws.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is I think it also helped bring about a few things. I think about the home defense, right? Where traditionally you would want something that's maneuverable that was like a pistol or whatever. And people say shotguns for home defense, blah blah whatever. But if you're in a small space, or you're a small person of small stature, having a shorter firearm that is still very effective at close range is pretty huge. And then I think about things like if you're in a blackout, where it was obviously, I assume, designed under, because there was a requirement for the military to have something that was more effective than 9mm in close range.
Well, they wanted something that could be shorter than a 10.3, but not lose terminal ballistics, because they knew if they went shorter than a 10.3 on the 5.56, they wouldn't have as good a terminal ballistics with that round, even with like a heavier 77 grain bullet. So they put out the bid to develop a round that, hey, can we do a 7-inch barrel and still have good terminal ballistics? They're like, yeah, we can. It's called a 3-inch blackout.
Which again, if then military application, obviously being, you can understand the reason behind that, but for civilians, if you were in a 16-inch barrel like minimum or maximum
Yeah, minimum.
minimum length barrel, then you're really like 300 blackout. The only use maybe for hunting purposes, but really like to use it in any practical sense would be to have a shorter barrel, and then having you people use 300 blackout effectively for home defense.
Yeah.
Is a huge boon to the industry, and then again points out the ridiculousness of SPR laws.
Yeah.
Like, and again, you're gonna have other cartridges that have been developed for that kind of style as well too. But again, continues the advancement as well. I think you're gonna see the advancement in ballistics and 300 blackout. Again, additional cartridges that are designed to be for more short range usage. And the civilian industry is going to keep pushing it, and you're going to get defensive. You already have defensive rounds for 300 blackout, and you're going to see that application be transferred over to the military as well too, because again, just the availability of
they're around like 8.6 blackout that's being tested. Being tested in the 338 arc that's being tested by the military for short, maneuverable, low profile guns for close range stuff.
Yeah.
To give them, I mean. Yeah, we all love the MP5, because it's 80s cool, but 9mm, not a great round when it's in that big of a gun. There's better stuff out there, and they've developed it now.
Yep.
So, and for the civilian market, the braces are what's led the industry to be able to afford to put research and development into those rounds, because without them, people would still just be running, pinned and welded barrels or 16-inch or 18-inch or 20-inch barrels. So there would be no reason to develop rounds for shorter barrels because nobody would buy them.
Well, then I was thinking about you brought the MP5 as an interesting point too. Is if you wanted to own an MP5 before a brace, you had to either SBR it, shoot it without a stock / brace on it, which you can do, I guess. The MP5K as well has been it's carried like that, I guess.
Yeah.
But less for people are used to shooting away, it's less enjoyable. But then also development of like the PCC market. Yes, there are plenty of PCCs that are 60-inch barrels, but you look at like the Vector or the Scorpion, any of those, or the BNT.
Designed to be small.
Designed to be small, and then can be sold with a brace.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then to your point in that too, like if you wanted to do that, 20 years ago, you had to have a ridiculously ugly gun. I mean, think about the Uzis from way back when they had a 16-inch barrel and this tiny little gun, or a Mac style pistol with a 16-inch barrel on it. You got this ridiculously long barrel hanging off the front of your gun, because that's what the law says you have to do if you wanted to have a stock on it. Otherwise, like you said, you had to have it as a pistol with nothing on the back and a short little barrel, and it was just an incredibly unwieldy gun to fire. So it was regulated as a range toy, unless you were trained with it.
Right.
You could train it out, but there's better uses of your time.
All right.
Take us home with our fifth.
Take us home for fifth is modularity in, we'll probably say primarily pistols, but modularity in firearms has been a thing for a while. If you think of like the AR-15 and the ability to swap up different uppers with different calibers and stuff, while not necessarily a new concept, definitely big deal within the last 30 years with the advent of multiple different calibers for upper receivers, right, without having to swap the lower receiver out, right? It's kind of a big deal. So and then those with even legally, the lower is the firearms you could have any different uppers sent to your house, which again goes back to you could have one upper for home defense, one upper for hunting, one upper for long range. The opportunities are endless there, right?
Yeah, kind of how I cheated in our last podcast.
Right, exactly. Bell fed upper if you want one too.
Bell fed, yeah.
Yep.
Multiple different calibers of bell fed.
Exactly. So a big deal. But then I was thinking, and that's that option has existed for many years. Whether or not it was taken advantage of until the last 30 years, that can be debatable. Again, going back to 300 blackout being kind of that initial cartridge, kind of kicking that concept of having a different caliber for your AR-15 upper.
Yeah.
But I also think about primarily I was thinking about the modularity of pistols with the fire control group being the serialized
Yeah.
part of the firearm. And I think I want to say there were other firearms that did this first, but it was really kind of known by like SIG's
Yeah, the
320.
320 line
Yeah,
really
was the big deal.
I can't think of any off the top of my head that had that were as widely accepted
Correct.
as the
Yep.
320. I mean, the
Yep.
320 really put a modular handgun that you could, with no gunsmithing, very little firearms knowledge, go from a subcompact, 12 shot double stack striker fired gun to a full size 21 round 5-inch barrel pistol with all one
Yeah.
serialized part. That's been huge, and we're starting to see that more and more take off,
Right.
and add the ability to take your handgun, swap a few parts out, and turn it into a more PDW style gun, like the Flux. PSA is doing it now with their Dagger line. It's X9, I believe.
Yeah.
Just announced this year at SHOT Show.
And I want to even say they were doing something with their shotgun too, where they were able to swap out some parts on it, and then the serialized part was like you could either do like was separate enough where you could do like a pump or a semi, and then swap the different parts out with it as well, which I think was kind of cool.
Yeah.
The one thing I like about modularity again, it's I would say it's still super new, but there's not as many companies as I thought maybe that would be doing it, but it has picked up a bit. The Echelon, I think, from Springfield is modular, but maybe there's just been some challenges with the 320. Whether or not that the safety behind that, maybe there's some concerns with that a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But man, we like our last podcast about the top 5, you could basically say, well, I would just do this fire control group, and then I could have a concealed carry pistol, or I could have a full size.
Yeah, concealed carry, full size
Or
competition,
even the PW.
PDW. You could fill, 3 rolls with, or I mean, if you add the AR-15 where its modularity into that, you could have all 5 guns be in 2 serialized components.
Yeah. And then maybe this isn't as big of a deal, and maybe the experiences are similar, but if you had a really nice, control group that had like a nice trigger on it that you really liked, then you could get the same like trigger experience.
Yeah.
I mean, grips aside, different grip sizes aside, but you can get close from one pistol to another, and you always have that. Or let's say SIG, which they do all the time, comes out with a new model, and you wanted to go to that, but again, you love the trigger that was in your old model, you just swap right over to the new model.
Or you just, I had the opportunity a few years ago at Carry Optics Nationals to shoot the SIG's new all-metal frame 320, and both me and my girlfriend, who we both like the SIG 320 line and never had any problems with it, contrary to other people's experiences. But we both shot that gun and loved it until we saw the price tag. However, I could also take my competition 320 and just buy the grip module for less than half the cost of the brand new gun and get almost the same experience with that pistol. I didn't particularly desire the slide, ergonomics of the slide. It was the same barrel length. I don't mind the slide on my X5 Legion, but that the grip module was the thing that I really enjoyed with that. And knowing that I didn't have to go out and drop, the $2,000 to buy the new gun that I like,
plus transfer
fees and things like that, I can just buy the one thing I like, save a bit of money, have it shipped right to my door, no gunsmithing required, just to pull a pin and pop this one in and be off to the races.
Yeah, I think I'll be curious what happens in the next 10 years there are some pretty big manufacturers that don't have a modular option yet.
Yeah.
Like Glock. I think Glock.
Smith &
Wesson. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if those in the next 4 or 5 years pick up that as an option. I'm honestly a little bit surprised Glock didn't do it with the Gen 6.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just because it's an option for them to sell more pistols or whatever, or if it's just having to do the inventory support of the option for customers to be able to buy different frames, different like mix and match kind of
Yeah,
things.
I think Glock has always been, too, their business model has always been a little bit of you'll buy it.
Right. I know, because we made it and you said so.
Yeah,
right.
It's not necessarily something I think that is. I don't think Glock's ever been super concerned with their layer in the market or in their having the opportunity to like sell grip modules and things like that, because I think you see a lot more with them relying on the aftermarket support. Like, everybody knows Glock sights are not good. Even their night sights aren't great. And then with the Gen 5, they offered an option for better night sights, but they were made by Ameriglow.
Yeah.
So Ameriglow made them for them and shipped them to them, I'm sure, and with Glock printed on them and Ameriglow printed on them, and Glock just installed them, rather than them having to contract or make them themselves. So another one we missed, the Ruger RXM.
Yeah, modular. That's a good point. I forgot about that.
I mean, that one has been with again, conjunction with Magpul again.
Yeah.
They Ruger makes the metal stuff, Magpul makes the plastics, and you have a honestly a pretty fantastic pistol for a very affordable price.
Yeah.
I guess I was a little too hard on Ruger in their earlier podcast. They make 3 good guns: the RXM, the 1022, and the Mark IV.
I have not shot an RXM yet, and it's funny because I don't hear a ton about it, and I think that's unfortunate because again, Magpul makes really good polymers, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think it's just they probably try to shop it around, and Ruger was the only one that probably bid on it, and they were like, "Well, I guess we're going with you." So
yeah,
and also Magpul has a great history of, like, even if they try to do it in-house, look them up with a product, and then they will like, this is a great thing. I think of ACR, right? Like, and then they'll sell it to somebody else, and it will go nowhere.
Yeah,
right?
Bushmaster killed it.
Yep, and they'll supposedly their flip case, briefcase gun thingy, whatever it's called, FMG, whatever.
FN9. FN9.
Yeah, whatever they're calling it.
That's the conjunction with Zev.
Yeah, so at least that's happening.
That's happening now. 20 years later.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, basically to sum it up, Magpul is kind of.
I know.
Magpul has been our best.
Magpul and Trujicon.
Magpul and Trujicon have been our biggest industry breakthroughs in the last 30 years. Those two companies.
That is kind of funny.
So thank you, Trujicon. Thank you, Magpul.
Yeah, please sponsor us.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna finish it up there.
I think so. It's late over here.
Yeah.
So, do you want to take us home?
Yeah. So thanks for watching Acceptable Accuracy or listening to the Acceptable Accuracy podcast. We'll do filming at some point. If you guys have any other industry breakthroughs that we missed or that you think should be on the list, don't hesitate to email us, podcast@acceptableaccuracy.com. And so this is Kyle, guest hosting again.
Thanks for joining for 2 episodes in a row.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we're just maybe someday you'll set to replace Tyler completely.
Yeah, well,
hear that, Tyler?
Doing his Timbuktu runs.
Yeah, he's got like 6 weeks of vacation this year, so it'll happen again.
Yeah. So I'm always around.
Cool.
So.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll see you for the next podcast.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah. And comment and email us.
Yeah. Comment.
All things.
Rate.
Yeah. Bye.